Internet. It is on Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros Ghostbusters has been around for, 40 years? 40 years? Yes, 40 years. This is actually the 40th anniversary. Well, will be in like 3 months. But yeah, it's been 40 years since the original Ghostbusters back in 1984. And everyone knows what this movie is right now. It's an 80s classic, it's a comedy classic. You all know the gist of it. And yeah, it was such a big hit that it obviously spawned a sequel, spawned a whole franchise. And then for years and years and years, people went on about, well, we need a Ghostbusters 3, we need a Ghostbusters 3, which we technically did get in the form of Ghostbusters, the video game from 2009, which had all the original Ghostbusters in the game, voiced and all. But, that's just a game. It's not canon, but, we technically did get a Ghostbusters 3. It just wasn't a movie. It was just a game you had to play. But it wasn't until 2016 where we got a third Ghostbusters movie, but it wasn't a sequel. Oh no, it was a reboot, an all-female reboot that, let's, going over that movie is gonna take. I don't want to go on and on about it, but let's just say it didn't work out. So then after that, Sony decided, okay, let's actually make a Ghostbusters movie that's an actual like follow up to the originals. And that's where Ghostbusters Afterlife comes into play. So this came out 3 years ago. And it was supposed to come out in summer 2020. That sure didn't happen for obvious reasons. And when this came out in 2021, people were curious about it because people were wondering, like, is Ghostbusters, like, is it game over after the failure that was the 2016 movie? Like, is there any more demand for a Ghostbusters movie? Turns out there is still some demand for a Ghostbusters movie because Afterlife did all right for itself. Sure, it made less money than 2016, but it cost less, so it looks a lot better in comparison. And it had a decent reception overall, especially when it came to fans. So yeah, so naturally they said, all right, let's keep going. Let's make another one. Here we are with Frozen Empire. So yeah, Ghostbusters, even though it's the whole franchise has had its ups and downs, it's still definitely a draw. It still has a ton of fans. So yeah, brand name recognition is obviously a pro. And the fact that it has a predecessor that was generally liked by the mainstream public got labeled that as a pro too. So that's two pros. So that's that. Pro number three is that competition wise, this weekend's all about Ghostbusters. I mean, Kung Fu Panda 4 and Dune Part 2, they're kind of played out at this point. They came out in the beginning of the month. They pretty much made most of their money at this point. And so obviously, especially after last week being just a nothing week, imagine people are probably looking forward to the next big movie, and this is that. So yeah. And besides, like, everything else coming out this weekend is pretty much not really worth discussing. So yeah, lack of competition, lack of like extreme competition. I'm gonna label that as a pro. Let's see. Any other pros? Well, this isn't a pro or a con. I might as well mention Thursday previews 4.7 mil. That's not bad. It's not amazing or anything, but it's not bad. But the thing is, that's barely higher than Afterlife, which I'm about to show you. See 4.5 million. which for Afterlife very solid. But for Frozen Empire, for a sequel, considering it's a sequel to Afterlife, it's not so great because you would ideally a sequel should perform much higher than its predecessor, especially Thursday night, because that's where all the fans show up. And historically, like sequels, they should open bigger than their predecessors. Obviously, that doesn't happen all the time, but ideally, that's what should happen. And sometimes the opening weekends may be similar, maybe slightly higher, but at least with Thursday previews, they should be higher. I mean, Deadpool 2, that had a Thursday preview of like 18 million compared to the first movie's like 12. And even though Deadpool 2 ultimately had a worse opening weekend than the first, it still had a better preview number, still had a better opening day than its predecessor. You would at least expect that with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I would expect this to make like 5, 6 million previews, not just ever so slightly higher than the first, I guess the last movie. So that's a bit of a cause of concern, if you ask me. But still, these numbers aren't horrible or anything. So that's why it's more of like a mixed bag type of thing. I'm not labeling as a pro or a con. Now, for actual cons, let's see. Reviews for this movie are not good. Like, really not good. I mean, they're not awful, but they're certainly not ideal. 43% Rotten Tomatoes. That's rough. I believe that is by far and away the worst score for a Ghostbusters movie. But I'm gonna fact check that. Ghostbusters. What was Ghostbusters 2? 55%. So it actually had a worse score than Ghostbusters 2. So it is the worst of the franchise. So that's not good. But sometimes critic scores, they don't matter. I mean, Bob Marley, One Love literally has the same score. And that was a nice little hit last month. Sometimes review scores don't matter all that much. What does matter a bit more is audience score. Audience score is at 85%, which is not great. For comparison's sake, I guess going back to Bob Marley, just looking at that, 92% audience score. And might as well look at some other stuff. Trying to what was the one, what was Doom Part 2? Doom Part 2, 95%. So ideally that score should be in the high 90s, like the somewhere in the 90s. So to be in the 80s, that says that word of mouth is just okay-ish. And Cinema Score tells a similar story. It has a B plus, which is worse than Afterlife's A minus. So that's not ideal. And hell, it's actually the same score that Ghostbusters 2016 had. Yeah. um. Yeah. So word of mouth is not the. It's not as good as it could be. So yeah, lackluster reviews and not so great word of mouth. I gotta label those two things as cons. So overall reception isn't that great, so that's a con. Another con is that when it comes to the franchise, I feel like it's played out in a way. Like I feel like it's kind of, this movie really didn't need to exist. I mean, I know why it does, but narratively, I think it's just, I don't know, kind of a waste. Kind of feels very cash grabby, even more than the reboot. I mean, like what should have happened is that you had Ghostbusters 1, 2, then you make like the third one, and then that should have been like it done. Like in a perfect world, that's what the Ghostbusters franchise should have been. Maybe you do like a big old reboot with like a young cast like 20 years later. Like that's what should have happened. But in the world we live now, well, that's not what happened. We got Ghostbusters 2016, this thing that I the flashbacks are flooding my brain with this whole thing, how it was marketed, how poorly that the first trailer was received, just the whole political, just the whole, I guess the politicalization of this movie, and how it was honestly like um the first movie to be involved in, like, I guess the culture war, if you will, online. So it was just bad time, bad time to be on the internet. Um, and yeah, this movie was such a failure that I feel like it may have done some permanent damage to the brand. Like, even with Afterlife, like, I was worried about Afterlife because, like, Ghostbusters 2016 turned off so many people. I'm just like, how many more people are willing to watch a Ghostbusters movie after that? And a decent amount of people did, but compared to 2016, not that much. But again, it costs less, so it's not a big deal. But Frozen Empire cost more than Afterlife, so yeah. And there was a there was a tweet about at Frozen Empire that is stuck with me. Hell, I made that the thing I put in my thumbnail, and that was someone saying that Frozen Empire felt like a DLC expansion to Afterlife, and I was just like, "Oh my god, that that's it. That's the perfect way to describe this. It doesn't really feel like a sequel, like a true sequel. Like the next chapter just feels like an add-on to Afterlife. It feels like how games sometimes you have like the main campaign, and then a little while later you have like a DLC expansion that adds like a few extra hours to the game, kind of like what God of War Ragnarok Valhalla was to the main campaign. It's like that. Or like in Spider-Man PS4, where you have like the City That Never Sleeps, like DLC chapters to the main story. That's what this feels like to me. It really does feel like that. And it's just, yeah, it kind of just kills it. It like kills the whole point of the movie. It's just like, why are we doing this? So yeah, the fact that Ghostbusters as a franchise has definitely seen better days in terms of like popularity and reception, and the fact that this movie just doesn't feel like a sequel, it feels just like just an add-on to Afterlife. Yeah, I'm gonna label that as a con, because yeah, just a con. Another con I can think of is that, I don't know, the hype for this movie just was never really there, like, at all. Like, at least with Afterlife, people were interested in it. With Frozen Empire, I was feeling nothing. Like, look, I felt hype for Doom Part 2. I felt hype for freaking. I felt hype for Five Nights at Freddy's. I felt hype for Oppenheimer. I felt hype for Barbie. I felt hype for freaking. Trying to think of another movie that's come out in recent memory, like Across the Spider Verse. That's a big one. But Frozen Empire just, nah, I wasn't feeling much of anything, and that's obviously a problem. And I could tell because, like, and actually, I think it was yesterday where I saw a report where like pre-sales for this movie were hella low. And I was just like, well, I'm not surprised. This wasn't exactly a movie people would be like, rushing to see immediately. Like, the hype was just never materialized. Even though this movie has been advertised and everything, it's just the hype was never there. So that's a con. The hype never being there. And another con is the fact that next week you got another big movie coming out that also has a severe hype problem. That movie being Godzilla X Kong. But the thing is, even if that movie doesn't do great, it's still going to take away from Frozen Empire. And I find it real funny that both movies have Empire in their titles. But yeah, having another big movie come out immediately after this, that's only going to hurt Frozen Empire, even though next week is a holiday because of Easter. It's still going to hurt. So dealing with Godzilla X Kong next week, that's a con. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. So opening weekend. Okay, so looking at the last two Ghostbusters movies, 2016 opened with 46 million. Afterlife opened with 44 million. Keep in mind, Afterlife came out when the box office was just starting to come back. Like it was just starting to, you know, feel somewhat alive again. Well, not really. Like its heartbeat was faint, but it was there. But it wouldn't be for a while before that heartbeat became more steady and more solid. But Frozen Empire, I mean, it should hit 40 million at least. Probably 40, I don't know, 40 to 45 million opening weekend. Its total, I don't think its legs are going to be that great. Maybe 100 to 110, 100, yeah. 100 to 100 to 110 million total. That's what I'm going to go with, which would not be great considering that budget and the fact that Ghostbusters movies don't do that great outside the states. So that's not good. I wouldn't expect another new Ghostbusters movie after this. I don't think it's going to happen, but who knows. But yeah, that's it. So that was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. We got three more movies to discuss. Yippee, just like last week. 4 movies. So next we have Immaculate, then Late Night with the Devil, and then Luca. And then I'll be the end of the weekend. So that'll be it for the weekend. So yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. Want to check out more videos like this? I got playlists on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I made this year. You want to watch any of those, any of the ones I've done the past few years, you can go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I've covered Ghostbusters Frozen Empire a few times. I just gotta find them. Okay. The first time was episode 121. I talked about it alongside Barbie, Cowdy versus Acme. Ugh. if only I knew what would happen to that movie. Like when I made that video. The Batman 2 and Venom 3. That was the first. I just called it Ghostbusters 4 because that's technically what it was. It didn't have like a name yet. And then next time I talked about it was episode 134. I talked about it alongside 13 Lives and Migration. And this is when like Ghostbusters Afterlife got like its Christmas date, which I thought was really weird because like Ghostbusters, the original two, hell, even 2016, those were summer movies. But then you got Afterlife coming out in November, and I got this in March. It doesn't feel right. Then episode 200, the strikes were happening at this time, and as a result, got pushed back. So at this point, I called it Ghostbusters Afterlife 2. So that got pushed back because of the strikes. Yeah, so I talked about it alongside Gran Turismo, the Karate Kid movie that's coming out this year that I'm still not sure what it is, and They Listen and Bad Boys 4. And then the last time I talked about it was when it actually got a title. That was episode 226. Talked about that. Godzilla X Kong for New Empire, Mickey 17, and let's see, 2 untitled Jordan Peele movies, and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So yeah, those are like the how many times? The 5 times I talked about this movie. So you want to watch any of those cancel episodes or any of the ones I've done on the channel, you want to binge them all from beginning to now. Highly, there's now like 238 episodes. Am I right? 38? Yes, 238. You want to watch any of those episodes, go do it. Highly encourage it. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for a particular month. March recap that won't come out until like the 5th and the 12th. It won't be until like that week. So about 2.5 weeks from now, roughly. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.